It's the androgenic nature of the drug and how it affects the neurological pathways in the mind to probably just make you fucking suicidal, or serial killer, I should say, or suicidal for some people.
Yeah.
That's why. I don't think any compound really directly affects or crosses the blood-brain barrier like Tren, to my knowledge.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. And that makes perfect sense because the psychoactive effects are so powerful compared to everything else. You know, even if you're taking Masteron, which is heavily androgenic, your libido's going to go up. You might feel like a little more confident or whatever, but like...
Masteron feels like Anavar compared to fucking Tren.
Dude, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy.
So I based androgens like... Before, I mean, I've read a lot, and even when I was in high school, I'd actually go down and read the medical books, and they only had like the USA medicated, like Anadrol and even Holotest and testosterone. I was a nerd then only for that, right? But the thing I could really base it off was my response to compounds, right? So I knew that like when I took Holotest, and I was like, holy shit, bro, the vascularity and hardness was insane. I didn't even know what it would do psychologically, but now that we know what it does, I realize how my interactions were with people in the gym.
Changes you.
Yes.
Yeah,
and okay, I was fucking eating this many calories. I was eating the same food for 16 weeks, literally 3 foods, which was dumb, right? I ate 9 grams of fat a day. I was fucking ripped.
It's crazy.
It was literally, I think it was less. I'm exaggerating. It was probably like 6. It was nuts, right? I didn't know you're supposed to have like 30. I ate 6. Fucking, I was looping. My skin was getting fucked up. But at the gym I went to, you had to sign in for the treadmill or elliptical half-hour sign-ins.
Which gym was this?
Gold's in Belmore.
Okay.
And I would do Vinny, Mike, Dave, and fucking Zane, whatever, right? Take up 2 hours. I would do 2 hours. And some woman walked up to me. I always remember, she goes, "You've been on this for a while." And without anything, you lose like that. You don't hold anything back.
There's no filter.
I go, "You're going to go home and eat a fucking donut. I'm going to go home and eat a piece of turkey." I go, "Get away from me." Gym owner Glenn comes up and goes, "Dude," he's like, "you can't do that." He's like, "Could you just go to that thing?" I'm like, "Fucking fine." But like normally I would have never done
That's
that.
not you. In terms
it changes you.
That's not you.
Dude,
yeah,
and dead
absolutely.
ass, my brain, and it was probably a combination of the halotestin and the dieting.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Right? Because I remember how fucking deprived of sugar and food I was that I literally could not, when I went shopping, I couldn't walk past the cookie aisle. I couldn't. I was going crazy, right? Literally crazy. And then I can't believe I'm going to share this. I used to do crazy shit though, right? Like, I don't know why I would fucking take cookies out of one thing, empty them, pour it. Dude, I was doing crazy shit. It made me crazy. Actually, completely fucking crazy. I'm like, no, I don't want vanilla. I want chocolate, but it's the same. But I swear, bro, when I look back at it, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing?
There's this great story that the wrestler Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, was telling when he was in WCW, they hired the Ultimate Warrior, and this is like 97, and the guy was still in just tremendous shape. And he said that the Warrior would go up to people at catering and just be like, "Can I smell your food?" And just like put his face by your pasta and just like, and then like, "Oh, I'm good," and just walk away.
So by you stating that means he probably ate relatively on point all the time to have that crazy physique.
Absolutely. He was 100% dialed in. I mean, like, surely he was on drugs, but he wasn't depending on the drugs. I mean, that guy, he was
fucking jacked.
Well, most guys that were pro wrestlers, they have good genetics. Back then, they took a lot of drugs, and the diet was questionable because you're on the road. He was one of the only guys that was a legitimate NPC bodybuilder. Before he got, so he knew how to train.
Did he ever compete in bodybuilding?
Oh yeah, he looked great.
He's fucking huge.
He had like a vintage kind of like Lee Haney style 80s physique, you know, like small waist,
Who's he standing next to? And I'm like, dude, he's way taller than I thought too.
He's like 6'3".
Bro, he's a big motherfucker.
It's a scary
I didn't
dude.
realize how big he was.
Yeah.
You know, when you see them run out, some wrestlers are kind of smaller and they lie by a couple inches. I think he was standing next to Hulk Hogan, actually.
Hulk Hogan's big.
And he's huge. I'm like, he wasn't that much shorter. I'm like, holy shit, bro. He's a big
Warrior's like 6'3". At his peak, they said he was a lean 275.
That's tremendous, dude.
Which is just
his
stupid.
arms are fucking huge. And then you saw that video, he died. How old was he? 53, I think?
Yeah.
52? He wanted to make a comeback, and probably just a lack of knowledge of what was going on inside with his heart, blockages.
So here's what's interesting. there's two documentaries that came out on the Ultimate Warrior at the same time. There's this thing on Vice called Dark Side of the Ring, which you would love, and they just pick a topic and they go into how fucked up it is. Like they don't hold back on it. And then A&E released a biography the same day. So they were like competing. One, they interviewed his ex-wife, Dark Side of the Ring. The other one, they interviewed like his current, widow now, right? And apparently he had a similar situation to John Meadows, which was every man in his dad and his family died at 55, a heart attack.
Wow.
So when you consider his physical size, the drugs and the stress of the road, had a pretty good life, right? I mean, all things considered, like how many wrestlers probably have the genetics to live to 80 and they croak at 40? So like, I think he was one of the few guys that was responsible. There's a really long interview with him. It's like 2 hours. I've listened to it a couple times, and it talks a lot about wrestling, but he does talk about training quite a bit and diet and everything else. I think he was really aware of the risks. Like he was smart and intelligent. Basically, he said like he wanted to go on gear when he was really young, and he was training at like just one of those vintage fucking 80s hardcore gyms. And one of the guys who was there was like an elite level shot putter, and the guy pulled him aside and he was like, "What are you doing? You don't need drugs yet. You haven't been training long enough. You know what I mean? You got to figure this shit out." And he said in this interview, they were like, "Could you make a comeback?" And he was like, "I don't eat the foods that I used to because there's no need for me to be that big." He's like, "I understand for me to be Ultimate Warrior, there are health risks that I have to take. Okay, I have to push my body a little bit more, and if I'm not getting paid millions of dollars, I don't have that money up front. I'm not going to carry around that extra 30 pounds or whatever the amount." Because he was shredded, like till pretty much the day he died, like jacked. Super lean. Obviously lost a lot of the size, but you and I are kind of in that same position. Like,
it's funny. Like,
get lean.
Yeah, like he was in his 50s, and I get antsy to take things. And I'm like, yo, I don't really want to take the drugs I did, and for what, right? Risk to reward, ratio. It's not worth it. Stress on your body, and like the amount of food you have to consume to get that big in combination with drugs at my age. I don't want to do it. So I'll dabble a little bit here and there. But I just listened and read something interesting about NAD levels in a human being and loss over time, and how you could, utilize food as energy, et cetera. So, interesting note, a point for people to take consideration if they're starting to feel this when they're older. Maybe look into NAD supplementation, not oral, but injectable, in my opinion, the most optimal way to take the drug, and how to maybe now at a certain point, because we all know we're in our 40s that, well, you're not in your 40s yet.
Knocking on the door though. So,
you start to accumulate that midsection fat that like, why the fuck did this happen? Yeah. Maybe it is a loss of NAD in your system. You can't turn over food as fast into energy. So maybe by applying or implementing a peptide like NAD, you could kind of reverse that and almost take you years back to a certain parameter.
I've used NAD, orally, and I feel great when I use it.
Really?
There is a lot of research. It's nicotinamide mononucleotide and nicotinamide riboside are the two main ones. I use it. I don't remember the dose offhand, but I take it every single day. My wife uses it. I definitely feel like I get a little bit leaner when I'm taking it. It could be placebo, but there is a lot of research behind that. Transresveratrol and I think quercetin dihydrate are the three kind of big, kind of cutting edge anti-aging supplements. I think you use that stuff in conjunction with like hormone optimization.
You're looking good. It's also not as important to me to be as the most shredded jack guy. Yeah, I want to be shredded. Yeah. But like you also, like at this point in my life, I forget my age sometimes from the things that I do. And I'm very blessed I could still do these things. I was telling Zane before, like, I drill. When I drill, you get lost and you forget about how old you are. I'm like, yo, there's no one my age drilling to that level. Very, very few people, But I just want to feel good. And now you take, see what's on the table to just feel good. And being as jacked as fuck isn't really as important anymore.
Well, dude, I don't think, this is what I find so funny, having done content with you and kind of seeing your audience, and you attract people like you and me, guys that still want to be in great shape, but they're older, they have different priorities. But there's always going to be that like suicide level meathead.
There is.
That's like
49. I get the DMs all the time, bro. Like two things I get. I get kids, right? Yo, I'm 20 years old. I'm trend ass master on. I go, bro, what's a good stack? Not that stack. I go, no stack. Yeah. is what's good right now.
Yeah.
Build the foundation. No foundation. When you have no foundation, what happens?
Yeah.
It fucking falls.
House falls down.
Okay. Build the foundation for years. Utilize your own, you're not on a natural cycle. Everyone goes, oh, you test this oil, you're on a natural cycle. No. Just fucking work out and eat a lot of food. I did that for a long time, bro. You know what I'm saying? Build a solid foundation. I mean, I started working out when I was like 11. Maybe that's why I'm 4'2". You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you're Italian, so the Italians are always short. Yeah.
That didn't help.
No, but you learned, so I was going to say, I don't think that when you live with something, let's say you have a crazy wife or girlfriend. Back when I was on a lot of drugs, I only dated crazy women, right? And you just get used to it. So you think it's normal to have some psycho yelling at you. When you feel like shit all the time, that becomes normal to you. You don't realize that you're not supposed to feel this way. I think if you took a lot of these crazy, kamikaze type meatheads and you just made them take a year where they lost 20, 30 pounds, they probably wouldn't go back. Because you just don't realize how bad you feel. I remember when I was 28 years old and I was tired all the time. I actually had this thought to myself, maybe I'm just getting old. It's just 28.
No, I
was 260 with a 20-something inch neck. I gave myself sleep apnea. I was exhausted all day long. Plus, you're on drugs, which fuck with your sleep and your endocrine system. Your adrenaline dumps when you don't need. It's really, really problematic. I think if a lot of guys took the weight off, they might not want to go back.
No, because then you start to you realize you feel better.
Yeah.
They're probably just so stuck in that meathead phase.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, what I was going to say, I get 49-years-olds. Taking Tren, I'm taking mass. I'm like, bro, not the worst idea, but you got to really take into consideration your age. And is it really worth it? And also they say, and I got other DMs saying, I'm taking this. I'm 47 years old. I'm going to take a 6-week break. Then I'm like, 6 weeks is not enough. Your body just starts to recover barely. And then you're jumping back on. Your body's going, okay, I'm ready to reset. And then boom, you go right back on. You're not really giving your body rest. But if you take those people and they take off those extra 20, 30 pounds because they love benching still and doing all this fucking meat hedging, getting out of breath, they're just used to it.
Yeah.
Take off the 20 pounds of muscle, feel healthy again.
You might not go back.
You're not going to go back. And if you want my opinion, I think when you see a 52-year-old still rocking like that, I'm like, bro, you didn't evolve, dude. You're going to fucking die.
So it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up. So in this interview with The Ultimate Warrior, he actually spoke about that. And they asked him about guys that were still wrestling, that from his generation. And he was like, look, there are people that look at Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan and they're like, wow, this is so inspirational. He's like, I think you're a fucking loser. he was just like, what are you doing? You're still trying to be 20-something years old. And he used to write these insane blog posts whenever a wrestler died. And he was one of the few guys that really wasn't being gentle about it. And the interviewer asked him, and he was like, think of it this way. You're 50 years old. You have 2 or 3 kids at home that you're barely seeing because you want to stay on the road all the time. You die in a shitbag motel with a gym bag full of steroids and painkillers. He's like, do you really expect me to be delicate and say that this wasn't a total fucking waste of life?
This is the Ultimate Warrior.
He's like, do you really expect me to say that this was a life well lived? These guys make so much money that if you still need the money at 50, what were you doing?
Are you referring to someone like Hulk Hogan?
Well,
he's different. He's
particular,
different.
He referenced Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, because at the time he had just died. And he was just the guy, he basically said he died in a shitbox motel.
He wasn't top of the fucking game anymore.
With a gym bag full of drugs. And he's like, what, you have children. You've got people that depend on you. You make enough money as a top flight pro wrestler that if you invested it and you saved it and you weren't spending it on Coke and Percocet or whatever, you would be fine. You could be retired off the road at age 40, 45.
Did he die a broke wrestler, the Ultimate Warrior?
No, he started businesses.
He was fine.
Yeah,
he was more intelligent than what I thought.
He also referenced, he was like, yeah, I made more money when I was pro wrestling, but okay, I'll reduce my footprint. He opened gyms. He did he was doing a lot of speaking gigs.
He was not
and everything.
A loser in that sense.
No, not at all.
He knew how to
totally
evolve.
Understood. Yeah. So that's why when you see Stone Cold Steve Austin and people are always asking him to come back, it's the guy's a millionaire.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do this to yourself? It just doesn't make any sense.
Not calling the 50-year-old who's jacked like that a
no,
loser.
No. That's not what he's saying.
That's not what I'm. That's not what I'm saying either.
Yeah.
But they don't know how to just fucking spin. If you changed and lost that 20, 30 pounds.
Yeah, of course.
And maybe you'd feel better. You just only know one way.
I think in the wrestling situation, it's also, you're talking about the lifestyle, being away from your family, taking recreational drugs, like being on the road all the time. Like, you're still looking for those thrills. I mean, dude, at a certain point, you're a man now. You're responsible for people. You have to take care of your family.
To my understanding, though, also they don't rock out like they used to.
Oh, they can't.
It's a little tighter.
They can't.
Yeah. Drug testing, the capability or the availability, I should say, to eat clean all the time.
Of course, yeah.
Not like always going to a diner eating some fucking scraps and from hash browns and fried eggs.
Yes.
They could order their meals, so it's a little bit cleaner of a lifestyle.
They treat them more like athletes now than like zoo animals.
Zoo animals.
Yeah,
back
in the day, it was like, I mean, Bret Hart would say this, like, you have a show in L.A., you can't calm down after the show. You take Percocet to calm down. You've got 3 or 4 hours to sleep. You got to catch a flight to New York for your next show. You do a bump of Coke to get up and go to the next show. Man. Where nowadays, like some of the bigger wrestlers, like The Undertaker and The Big Show, the WWE literally gave them a Winnebago with a driver.
Wow.
Makes sense. You're 7 feet tall. There's no way you're going to be comfortable on a plane. There's going to be a kitchen in there. Okay,
comfortable.
You could sleep and rest, and it really is a better return on their investment. Like, you get a guy who is really talented. Talented people are not everywhere. Why would you want to burn this guy out in 5-10 years when he could be an intellectual property that lasts you 2 decades?
Investment.
Yeah, it's way different.
It's a professional athlete.
Yeah,
at the end of the
day, and the guys look different. You said that before too. You go back and look at the '80s guys like Lex Luger.
Bro, they were huge. I watched my son so into wrestling. He loves the old stuff. He loves the new stuff, and I forgot. Like what the old guys did. They were like wasn't he Davey Boy Smith? He was huge. Yeah. And I read a little bit more on his Wikipedia, and he died at 39 years old of a heart attack. And what happened to him? He got actually a really bad injury, got addicted to painkillers, right? And then he actually, from what I've read though, that he cleaned himself up and was making a comeback and died, probably from clogged arteries and steroids.
They found Trent in his system when he died.
Yeah.
So like it was like he was on gear. It was what it was. But I mean I also think though, even if you still have the macho perspective of like, okay, I want to get chicks or I want to look impressive. The big kick that I've been on, I spoke about this to you a couple weeks ago, is like studying how legitimate, like guys that actually look good and train hard, like Hollywood stars train and prep for roles. Like if you ask me who would I rather look like, the British Bulldog or Stallone from Rambo 3.
Yeah.
I'm picking Stallone from Rambo 3. And you always talk about, you have this great line, it would be a good t-shirt for you. The 1%, the 2%, not the Bernie Sanders, the 1%. But I mean, like actually like when you're in this world, you don't realize how the rest of the world perceives you. And so like, I remember going to the beach with my wife before we were even in a relationship. This had to have been 2009, 2010. I was like 6'2", 215, shredded, and she was like, wow, you really look good. My idiot brain hears, well, if you put on another 30 pounds, you'll look even better. And that's what you get from living in this world. Like, I'm competing with other guys.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you're just in a bizarre little niche that the rest of the world doesn't really understand. And when I was powerlifting, I loved it. Every time I add 100 pounds to a lift, I felt like I was getting a belt in jiu-jitsu. I promoted myself.
Self-gratification.
600 pounds. Cool. But I started to realize the average person does not know the difference between a 700-pound deadlift and a 500-pound one.
Zero. Only we do.
Yeah. You tell them, and they're like, that's great. They don't know what the fuck that is.
Disney
it's
World.
Not quantifiable to them.
Every time I go, think Disney World. Remember we were on the phone the other day? Yeah. How out of touch of reality I am? When we had the conversation the other day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so tough when my biggest struggle in this industry has always been meeting the novice client where they are. I mean, you started training when you were 11. I started training when I was 14. I haven't been a beginner in 25 years.
Yeah, I don't even know what it's like.
I can't fathom not making time to train. I can't fathom.
Where you said to me the other day, remember? The psychology of it. You're taking an individual, which one of the toughest things to do and the hardest thing to do is just to make it to the gym. Now you're going to request them to cut calories. Then you're going to add a day of work. I was like, excellent. You're right. Put it in perspective in my brain.
Yeah.
For the most people. So what you're saying, we're stuck in, as Zane would say, a bubble.
Yeah, absolutely.
all I'm surrounded of fucking the same people.
Yeah, you got killers around you 24/7
all the time,
Yeah.
and it's like a curse and a blessing, almost a curse for what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, no, man. I'm like 22 sets. I'm like, anybody could do that.
No, I mean, this is, and that's the thing. Like, another aspect that you and I don't understand. Well, we understand it, but we can't really comprehend it. Is like, because we're in the bubble. Like, Zane is the most out of shape person in my bubble. Okay, compared to a regular person, he's in incredible shape. Okay,
We were just discussing that.
yeah. So it's
As many fucking little halal wrappers we find in his car, right? Blessed Reese's peanut butter cups and matcha teas and fucking ding dongs. I looked in his car. I went, "You're a fucking fat shit, but you only eat once a day." Right?
So it's,
He's an alpha male.
no, in his own strange way, for sure. And so the thing is, and I think this is something that we got to start talking to clients about, in the sense of like, we don't understand people not having good infrastructure around them. And we spoke about this before. Like, I've trained a husband whose wife, consciously or unconsciously, wants him to stay fat.
No, they do.
Okay. People actually don't want you to improve. It is rare to find a friend that wants to see you get wealthy, that wants to see you date a hot chick.
Important. Fuck.